once I went on maternity leave and was waiting to go into labor, like that's what I was doing. I was sitting and doing puzzles and watching Scientology documentaries. Hey friends, welcome back to the Millennial Mama Memo podcast, a weekly memo from your favorite Millennial Mama therapist. I'm Lauren, a late diagnosed ADHDer, mom of two, licensed therapist, and founder of Millennial Mama Therapy. I built the Millennial Mama universe for moms just like me who are figuring out who they are on the other side of becoming a mom. I work with moms all throughout California, and I also host 2 free virtual support groups for moms everywhere. If you're new here, hi, I'm so glad that you found me. And if you're a regular, welcome back. Let's get into it. All right, friends, let's dive in with the Millennial Mama Mix this week. This is a little bit of everything on my radar as a millennial mom and person. And I don't know about where you guys are, but where I am, we have survived our first few weeks of school. And the process of going back to school this year versus last year has really caused me to just do a ton of reflecting. I thought that last year when my older daughter started TK, which is a California thing, it stands for transitional kindergarten. Think of it like preschool. When she started TK last year, I assumed it was going to be very, very easy because she has been going to full-time childcare, daycare. She was in a Montessori daycare. The program that she is in, it's a public charter school, but it is a Montessori-based charter school. I didn't think it was going to be hard for me, and I didn't think it was going to be hard for her. And I was wrong. I cried dropping her off, and I will absolutely put pictures of me crying in the newsletter as proof. It was just so wild because the school that she's at, she was the youngest student, and the school goes up through 8th grade. So it's kind of felt like I was strapping a backpack to my newborn and dropping her off because the kids at her school, even though the, middle schoolers are on the opposite side of the campus, they're so big and everyone seems to know what to do. And, at daycare, they give us daily reports and send pictures and we know what's going on versus at school, you really don't know what's going on. Also, last year when she started in August of 2025, I had been diagnosed with ADHD about 4 months earlier. So I was deep in the process of understanding what of the things that I had been experiencing, symptoms and challenges I'd been having were related to ADHD and how to work and adapt on those things and help life work better for me. Like what are the things I could change and, processes I could put in place or tools that I could use to help me. Well, without sharing too much about my child, I will just share that as we and many of us know, ADHD absolutely has a level of heritability to it. And there had been some things that we had seen that kind of made me go, maybe. And then starting TK, it was like, oh, wow. So last year, her going to school brought up a lot of stuff for me. It brought up a lot of inner child work. It brought up a lot of things from my childhood and things that I had struggled with. And, as parents, we want our kids to have a different experience than us. And like sometimes watching them struggle in similar ways can bring up our own fears. And, then the reactions we're having are about us versus them. So last year was a lot of work for me of getting support that I needed to be able to support my child, being able to separate her experiences and what she was dealing with from me and my experiences. And so now a year later, it's been kind of a cool thing to just like see all the growth that she and I have had, like getting to watch her grow, hold space for her growth, work on my own growth and healing right alongside her. It's been a really, really cool thing. So starting off this year has been a lot different than it was last year. And it's kind of cool because now I'm having opportunities to support other parents at the school where they're kind of walking through similar things with their kiddos. One of the mindsets that I try to have in life is how can things that I've been through in the past be used to support me as I continue moving forward? And that's not to be Pollyanna about, trauma or anything like that. And, positive only. No, like let's call a spade a spade. Like if something is terrible, we're going to call it terrible. And then as a result of growing, healing, overcoming those things, being able to use those things to support others is something that helps me make meaning out of things that were really, really hard and challenging for me. So anyway, if you are heading back to school, if your kiddo is starting TK or going to school for the first time, I'm just sending you all of my best wishes, big love. I know it's hard. It can be so hard for us as parents, but also it can be a really, really beautiful thing. Okay, moving on to favorites folder, which is good stuff I can't stop talking about that you should know about. Today, I am going to talk about cult documentaries. I find high control groups very, very interesting. I did, even before I deconstructed from being an evangelical missionary kid, I was just always interested in like Scientology or like the LDS church and how those things kind of operate and whatnot. And then as an adult, when I began my own deconstruction process and realizing, oh, I think part of that interest is because on some subconscious level, I realized or recognized patterns about what happens within like Scientology and what I was kind of seeing within where I grew up. And it's very interesting too, because my experiences growing up were not nearly to the level of what people experience in Scientology or some of these other really awful, terrible, destructive, high control groups and things like that. But it's just interesting, like similar patterns or similar thought processes that can happen. And yeah. So anyway, recently I binged Heaven's Gate, The Cult of Cults, and The Vow. And The Vow is about NXIVM. And it's just so interesting. I find it also interesting. I also binged a ton of Leah Remini's show about leaving Scientology when I was pregnant with Harper. Like once I went on maternity leave and was waiting to go into labor, like that's what I was doing. I was sitting and doing puzzles and watching Scientology documentaries. So I just find it very, very interesting. I think I find the process of what causing somebody to doubt themselves and separate from their intuition, from their gut, from what they know is right or wrong, like causing them to doubt that so that way they align with like a overarching like structure or thought process or leader. I find that so interesting. And then what the process of healing from that looks like. All of that I just find so interesting. And again, some of it has, I'm sure, is because, that's been my own process. Part of why I love working with moms and helping them find their version of motherhood is because the version of motherhood that works for you is the one that works for you as an individual. You have to be deeply connected with who you are as a person to find what works. Like when we are like, oh, this is the one way to do it. Like this is the one way to be a mom or the best way or whatever. Like in some ways, now that I'm talking about it, not to say motherhood is a cult, but I kind of think that any ideology, when we start to hold something up as like there is only one right way to do it, or like this is the absolute best way, the ideal way, everybody should strive for that, that starts to get dangerous because we are all so unique and so individual. And ultimately, I think we find our most fulfilling way of living and approaching life when we are able to do so from our perspective, from what is resourcing for us, what's healthy for us, and all of that. And we're able to better show up for other people when we first show up for ourselves and take care of ourselves. So anyway, this last week I have been binging a lot of cult documentaries. So if there are any others that you like that I should check out, shoot me a DM over on Instagram. I would love to know. All right, moving on to Pink Couch Post-its, which is updates, hot takes, and things worth knowing from the Millennial Mama universe. And today I want to talk to you about why specialization matters when it comes to mental health. I mean, honestly, any type of healthcare, but particularly mental health, and also especially for moms. And this topic today is absolutely rooted in what is currently happening with Lindsay Clancy. As a mom and as a therapist specializing in maternal mental health, I can't not have seen what is going on. And I've kind of hesitated to talk about it because there are so many people talking about it right now. And I just feel so much compassion and sadness for this mom. And, so many people are saying amazing, good things out there. So many other mental health providers are adding really well to the conversation that I don't think that there's really anything more for me to contribute. And there's also so much speculation. And I just, I haven't had a right thing to say, if that makes sense. But then this topic of why specialization matters came to mind. And I realized that actually I have already started talking about this. I made a post on Threads way back in March. And what I said was, hot take that's going to piss some therapists off. I have since learned that I don't talk about hot takes on Threads because then I get people who are pissed off at me and I don't like that. But anyway, what I said is if you don't have specialized training in perinatal mental health, stop working with pregnant and postpartum people. A license and a master's degree are not enough. Why? Because neither requires perinatal mental health units or training. Oh, and while I'm at it, having a baby does not make you qualified to treat perinatal mood disorders. Your lived experience matters, and it's not a substitute for specialized clinical training. Get trained or refer. And then I had also made a couple of follow-up notes where I said, I just want to drop a little follow-up note here. I've had so many great convos in this thread, and a big thing that has come up is access. Access to specialized care and training is a privilege, and access to care, period, is a privilege. I should have included consultation as an option in my original post. Most of us in the perinatal specialty are super passionate about access and equity. I love consulting, mentoring, and offering access to skills and resources I've had the privilege to obtain. And then I also included below that some links to low cost and free care resources and consultation and things like that. But one of the things that came up in the Lindsay Clancy trial, and again, I'm not going to get into like the details of it, but they have had her mental health professionals testifying. And one of those professionals had listed on her website that perinatal mental health was a clinical interest of hers. But to my understanding, totally willing to be, proved wrong here and stuff. I've been very mindful about how much I'm consuming about the case for my own mental health while also still being informed about it. She didn't have specialized training, particularly in working with something like postpartum psychosis, which is an extremely serious medical condition. So something that I just wanted to put out there to moms is just be mindful of wording like I work with moms versus I'm a perinatal specialist. If someone is saying that they're a perinatal specialist, I want you to look for something called the PMHC. So after their name, they will, list their name. So for example, for me, I'll list Lauren Pulis, and then I'll list MA, which is my master's degree. And then I'll list LMFT, which stands for Licensed Marriage and Family Therapist. And then people should also include their number so you can look them up and verify their license. And then also there is the PMHC, which stands for Perinatal Mental Health Certified. And that is something that's available through Postpartum Support International. And in order to get that certification, you have to go through multiple trainings about perinatal mental health, and then you have to take an exam. And then there are also continuing education units you need to do to maintain it. It proves you have that specialization, because I wasn't lying in that thread that I had zero training in maternal mental health when I came out of the process of getting licensed. I didn't receive any information about it in my master's degree. I didn't receive any information about it in the process of getting licensed. I self-sought all of my education about perinatal mental health, specifically through Postpartum Support International, as well as others. So if you are a mom and you are dealing with perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, perinatal OCD, postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, all of that, ask the person you're working with, that you were considering working with, do they just work with moms? Or are they a perinatal specialist? What training do they have? How much experience do they have? If they don't have a ton of experience, do they have consultation? Are they getting consultation around this? How are they supporting themselves in that? So that way they're giving you access. They're providing you good care, good clinical quality care. You are allowed to ask these questions. You're not being rude. And if the provider gets defensive about it, that is absolutely a warning sign. I want to give you another example about this. So for example, like OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is an anxiety disorder. It lives in the same family of disorders as generalized anxiety disorder. However, OCD is a specialization. Working with generalized anxiety disorder and working with OCD are two very different things. OCD requires a very unique type of treatment and therapy called exposure and response prevention, ERP. If ERP is not done, OCD is not going to get better, and in fact, it can get worse. If we treat OCD the same way that we treat generalized anxiety disorder, it can actually get worse. And especially then when you layer on the level of a perinatal OCD, you need to have the understanding of both OCD and perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. So it's really, really important to understand all of this and to find people that can back up their specialization. After I first decided that I wanted to work with moms, I was really mindful to say, yeah, I love working with moms. I love supporting moms. But I didn't say I specialize because I didn't have the training yet. Or I would say I'm interested in this and I'm pursuing the training and things like that. But, there's a difference between I work with this or I can work with this. And honestly, a lot of therapists, we're not trained in marketing as a part of our master's degree. We're learning kind of as we go. And so sometimes we'll say something because we, want to present ourselves a certain way. We want to, market, bring people in, all of that. But that doesn't necessarily mean we're specialized in it or we actually have all the training and experience. I mean, like, I've worked with, people who've experienced hallucinations, but I wouldn't say I specialize in that because I have worked with that. I have worked with people on addiction, but I don't specialize in it. We come out of our training, and getting our experience hours with having these really broad levels of experience, but not necessarily having the depth behind it. So anyway, that's just something that I just wanted to reflect on and share with you guys. I also want to point you guys to two really great resources. One is the Massachusetts General Hospital Postpartum Psychosis Project, the MGHP3. They are doing a lot of research about postpartum psychosis, and they have a lot of information about the treatment and things. They have a really wonderful page that talks about survivor stories, so you can hear what it's like for people who've experienced it and have survived, because it's such a poorly understood diagnosis. And the thing about it too that's really, really tragic is that it is short term. Everybody with postpartum psychosis eventually comes out of that break from reality. And then the tragedy is that then if something terrible happened, they are well, they are connected with reality for the rest of their life, knowing what happened during this temporary break from reality. So postpartum psychosis is highly treatable, it's highly temporary, and it's highly dangerous. And so I think it's really important for all of us to have an understanding of what we should be looking for. And I want to point you guys in particular, Postpartum Support International has a perinatal mental health signs, symptoms, and treatment page on their website. I'll link it in the show notes. And it goes over every single perinatal mood and anxiety disorder that you might experience. And it talks about all the signs, all the symptoms, all the treatments with links, how to find local support. So if you have somebody in your life who is pregnant, planning to become pregnant, whatever, if you are a perinatal provider, and maybe not a mental health provider, definitely keep that link handy and regularly familiarize yourself with things that you should be on the lookout for. All right, moving on to one last thing. This is where I invite you to join the Millennial Mama universe. You can subscribe to In Case You Missed the Memo, my weekly newsletter, and the Millennial Mama Memo podcast if you're not already subscribed. You might join one of my support groups. I have two. Both are non-clinical. Mama Mess Hall meets weekly and the Break Room meets monthly. You could also grab a match list, which is a 30-minute non-clinical phone call where I learn about what you're needing, and then I provide you with a personalized list of local supports, services, and resources. This is not limited to California, so if you're out of state, I've got you covered too. Now, if you are in California and you're ready to do something about the things you've been carrying, it's time for an ART intensive. These are 4 appointments over 4 weeks with a defined goal and treatment endpoint. I've got 3 slots open in August, so go ahead and book your consultation call today so we can get you on the books. All right, friends, that's your Millennial Mama memo for the week. Head to the link in my bio to subscribe to my newsletter in case you missed the memo so you never miss a memo. And I'll see you next week.